In this video, we're going to talk a little bit more about the diversity of gymnosperms. So we're going to take a look at the 4 phyla that make up the gymnosperms. So first, let's take a look at the classification of gymnosperms. So first of all, they are in domain Eukarya. And so remember, domain is the most inclusive or the broadest level of classification. The other domains that we have talked about in this class include domain bacteria and archaea. And gymnosperms are in domain Eukarya because they are made up of eukaryotic cells. And remember, eukaryotic cells have a true nucleus. So they have a nucleus that is surrounded by a membrane. They have other organelles that are also surrounded by membranes, including mitochondria, endoplasmic reticuli, so smooth and rough endoplasmic reticuli, Golgi apparatus, and chloroplasts. They also have multiple linear chromosomes. That are organized around histone proteins. Gymnosperms are in the supergroup Archaeplastida, and Archaeplastida includes the other plants, as well as red and green algae, which we talked about when we talked about the protists. They are in kingdom Plantae, and I misspelled it here, so let's go ahead and add a little E to the end, so kingdom Plantae. And then there are 4 phyla that the gymnosperms are classified into. There's phylum Cycadophyta, which are the cycads, Ginkgophyta, which are the ginkgophytes, Cnidophyta, which are the cnidophytes, and Coniferophyta, which are the conifers. So let's start by taking a look at the plants in the phylum Cycadophyta. The cycads are often found in mild climates, and by mild we mean tropical and subtropical. They are often confused with ferns because their leaves look similar, but they are not ferns. They have large trabili, and I just realized that autocorrect changed this to stromboli, so I apologize. That should be strabili. And that's these cones here. They are generally pollinated by beetles, which is kind of unusual. They are often used as ornamental plants, so people have them in their houses, and many species are endangered, which means that they are limited in number and at risk of becoming extinct. Now let's take a look at phylum Ginkgophyta. You've maybe heard about Ginkgo biloba, which is actually the only current surviving group of this phylum. They have these kind of interesting fan-shaped leaves that turn yellow and fall off the plant in the fall or the autumn. They are dioecious, which means that they have male and female organs on different plants. So you have to have a male plant and a female plant both present in order for sexual reproduction to occur. One reason why Ginkgo biloba is still around and the other species in this phylum are not is because Ginkgo biloba has been cultivated for centuries by Buddhist monks. And so these Buddhist monks have basically kept Ginkgo biloba alive over thousands or hundreds of years. Ginkgo is resistant to pollution, so it's often planted in populated places, and plants can actually help to improve air quality. Now, the seeds produced by the female plants supposedly smell like rancid or rotten, butter that has gone bad. So gardeners usually only plant the male plants of these species. Now we'll take a look at the phylum Cnidophyta. The phylum Cnidophyta have broad leaves, and there are three genera, which are just a more specific level of classification found in this phylum. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about ephedra, nidum, and velvetsia. The genera ephedra is located in dry areas along the west coast of the United States and Mexico. And this plant is interesting because it produces this compound known as ephedrine. And ephedrine is a strong decongestant that is only available by prescription. It is similar in chemical structure to amphetamines. The genus Nidum is found in parts of Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, and they include trees, shrubs, and vines, like what is shown in the picture here. The genus Velvetsia is located in the Namib Desert, which is in southwestern Africa. And these are really interesting plants. So each plant only produces 2 leaves. And in this picture, you're actually seeing multiple plants because we're seeing more than just 2 leaves. But essentially what happens is that this plant produces these 2 leaves and they continue growing throughout the life of the plant. And these plants could be potentially hundreds to thousands of years old. Now, the ends of the plants do start to dry out and fall off, so they do have a limit as to how long they can get, but you can see that these are pretty big leaves that we're seeing here. Now we'll talk about phylum Coniferophyta, and these are the conifers. Some general information about the phylum Coniferophyta. They are the most dominant gymnosperm phylum, so these are the ones that you're probably most familiar with. They're also the most diverse, so they have a lot of different types of plants that kind of fit into this phylum. Many of them are evergreens, meaning they do not lose their leaves in the winter, and you're probably familiar with basically Christmas trees, so things like pines, spruces, and firs. Cedars, sequoias, these are like the big redwoods out in California. So these are some examples of evergreen conifers. Deciduous just means that the leaves fall off, typically in the fall, and regrow in the spring. And being in South Carolina, you're probably pretty familiar with the bald cypress. And so cypress we find around swamps. One interesting ecological role of the conifers are that they are often harvested for wood or timber. I actually do woodworking as a kind of a hobby on the side, and we work with pine a lot. And so we actually work with the wood of these conifers. Conifers are typically very tall. Think of the giant redwoods in California. They are coniferous, which means that they have those cones. And remember, the cones are also known as strabili. And their leaves are modified in a way that actually makes them more adapted to the environment in which they live. And so instead of having kind of broad, flat leaves, they tend to have these needle-like leaves. And these leaves have a thick cuticle. And remember that cuticle is kind of a waxy covering over the leaves. Now, the needle-like shape of these leaves helps to reduce surface area, which reduces water loss. And so these are trees that typically can live in fairly dry environments. It also helps to prevent snow buildup. So these are trees that are typically found in kind of higher altitudes and higher and lower latitudes. where it's typically cold and there can be a lot of snow. And snow could be detrimental if it were able to basically build up on the tree. It would cause a lot of weight to be on the branches, which could potentially break the branches. It could cover the leaves so that they're not able to do photosynthesis. It would just cause a lot of problems. But these needles, the snow, there's not a lot of surface area for it to stick to. So the snow typically just kind of slides off, not causing those problems.